What would you ask a lawyer if you could ask them anything? My brother and I opened up an answering machine to allow friends and family to do just that. The questions we received were remarkable. So remarkable, in fact, that we decided to turn them into a podcast. Now, while this podcast isn't legal advice and it's just for fun, we think you're really going to like what you hear. With that being said, my name's Nathan Beam, and I help run a personal injury law firm in Melbourne, Florida.
My name's Riley Beam, and I'm a personal injury attorney.
And from the law offices of Douglas R. Beam, this is Good Questions for Bad Days.
How do I get away with murder?
Okay, so this may be the most ridiculous question I think we've received on the answering machine, and we've received a lot. So I guess to start, I guess we should probably make it clear that we don't condone murder in any circumstances. Don't commit murder, yeah?
Yeah, we need a whole podcast episode. It's just a disclaimer.
Yeah, that's it. This is this entire podcast episode. So first off, do not commit murder under any circumstances. That is obviously insane, and I think it's pretty clear that this question was asked with some jest. But I think it is an interesting sort of phenomenon in our society, Riley, that people will go to trial. They will be guilty of something. And in some circumstances, they walk away free. This has happened, and this will happen this year, and it's happened in years past. And I guess I'm curious, when you think about this, and you think about people getting away with things, why does our legal system allow for this sort of outcome?
Well, there's a few things you look at. You look at, in a criminal setting, that the person can either not be proven to have done it by reasonable doubt, beyond any reasonable doubt. That's a Casey Anthony case, right? So that's what everybody... Or O.J. Simpson, there's enough reasonable doubt out there for jurors to say, you know, we're not going to convict this guy. It's definitely sketchy. He probably did do it, but there's enough things out there that make me think he didn't do it. Then there's justifiable homicide, right? Someone's trying to hurt you or kill you. You have a right to defend yourself. So, you know, that's Kyle Rittenhouse. That's a George Zimmerman type of a case. That also, you know, takes into account that reasonable doubt as well. So if you have enough reasonable doubt mixed with that defense, you're going to be able to really, you know, defend your client there for what they've done. And then you also look at, there's issues involving negligence. You know, it's not an intentional act. Sometimes people die. It's purely a mistake. Someone isn't paying attention and walks into traffic. You know, that at-fault driver may not be at fault. They may just be driving and there's nothing they could have done. So, you know, that's a defensible, you know, position there. So you're not actively trying to do it. And then it also takes into account, you know, your mentality before you do it, your mindset. Is it something that you plan to do? Was there any sort of deliberation in your mind beforehand, premeditation beforehand, that I'm going to go and hurt this person? Did it happen in an instant? You know, there's degrees of murder and intent. You know, is there passion involved? And there's all sorts, you know, this could be, you know, books and books written on this topic. So there's definitely ways to get away with murder. And a lot of times it can be that you did it and you didn't get caught doing it. So there was enough evidence against you.
That's interesting. So sometimes when I'll be discussing with people what you do and what I do and kind of our family's business, they'll throw questions at me like, well, do you defend guilty people? Are you trying to get people off the hook? Because while our focus is on personal injury, In the past, we've done lots of criminal defense cases, and we still do some
Yes.
of those occasionally as a law firm. Riley and my dad do try those. But with that being said, I guess I'm curious, directly speaking to you, Riley, what happens in a hypothetical situation if you defend someone, they're acquitted, and later they come to you and they confess that they did the murder? They say, "Mr. Beam, thank you for getting me off of that charge. I did it." Like, what happens? Hypothetically, if that was to ever occur.
Isn't that Primal Fear? Is that movie? It's Richard Gere defends his client and gets him clear of the charges. As a lawyer, if someone tells you something that they did do or in the past, that's attorney-client privilege. So even if they, lied to you during the process, that's between you and the client. But you do have some duty to relay that information if your client, and it's really tricky, if your client, they call it suborning perjury, if they're on the stand lying, actively lying, it's tricky, but you have to remove yourself from the case because you don't want to violate attorney-client privilege, but you also don't want to have a client on the stand, actively lying and misrepresenting the truth that is not true. So that's a really tricky situation. But after the fact, and they were found not guilty, there's not really much you can do. If they tell you they're going to commit a crime in the future and it's directed towards someone, you do have an obligation to report that as well. So if they said, I actually did it and I'm going to do it again, I got the brother, now I'm going to get the sister, you have a moral and ethical duty to report that if they're planning to do something that has not been done yet.
In criminal cases, what is your goal?
Your goal is to defend your client, but also defend the system. So if someone comes to you and they ask you to represent them and there's a lot of evidence stacked against them, you do your best to, again, you're not lying. You're not telling the jury lies or creating evidence or things that don't exist to misrepresent the truth. You're trying to uphold the system and the standards within the criminal law system. And, you would expect that for yourself if you had a lawyer representing you. So that's where we're at. And that's, we've defended people accused of really bad stuff, but it's up to the system to prosecute and do that work to prove that your client's guilty. It is not your obligation to go out there and tell people your client did it or you think your client did it or any of that. Your job is to uphold the system and represent the best interest of your client within that system.
That's great. Well, I guess to close out, we've talked around it, but that was a pretty insane question we were asked. So I guess just to reiterate it, what is your response to the question, how do I get away with murder?
Don't think about and murder someone ahead of time. Don't do that.
All right, everyone in the class, please raise your hand if you were surprised by our answers. I hope y'all weren't. But overall, we do really hope that this podcast help you understand criminal defense and how that works, legally speaking. If you're facing a legal issue, particularly a personal injury one, call us. With over $100 million in settlements and verdicts for families in Central Florida, we've gotten pretty good at what we do. And in the 35 years we've been open, the reviews and the word from the community, I think, is representative of that. So if you're facing any sort of legal issue, you should call us. If we can't help you, there's a really good chance that we know someone who can. And hey, if you're an attorney who's listening to this podcast and is looking for co-counsel in Florida, you should also give us a call. We regularly work on multi-million-dollar cases and would be happy to help. You can reach us at 321-723-6591 or at dougbeam.com. And from all of us, the law office of Douglas R. Beam, we really appreciate you listening. and we're looking forward to answering more good questions for bad days.